It's nice to be with all of you and so many new faces. So for all of you that are new, there's no preconceived notions of whether I'm good or not on speaking. But what I want to see is this while I'm speaking so that I'll feel comfortable. Just a little bit of what Jan spoke about is, since I do have a few minutes up here, is I did have a Toastmaster moment, and my goal in joining Toastmasters almost 2 years ago was to become a professional speaker. And the topic of that was going to be how to grieve joyfully. And a few of my speeches here in our local Toastmaster Club have been along those lines, but not just in grieving, but just choosing joy in life in general, and how that can make you a better person and to help others around you be more joyful. So that was a really interesting experience. There were 70 people there, and I had a podium, and I found that I'm really comfortable with the podium. I think that comes through all my years of speaking in church, where I'm always behind a podium and a microphone. And the as it would be, the clicker battery was dead. So I can't remember what happened. Oh yeah, I had to just do it from my laptop, so that kept me at the podium. But it was a really great experience, and I had a lot of good feedback, and it was my first breakout into that world of professional speaking. So if you think that you're scared now, when you really get out there and do it, I wasn't scared at all. I was really excited to do that. So a funny thing happened to me on the way to this speech. I was asked yesterday if I'd fill in. I don't know who was on the agenda to speak, but I guess 2 places became available. And rather than the speech that I was going to do towards my advanced confident communicator bronze, I decided to finish up my advanced leadership bronze by doing this topic of resolving conflict. And it's funny because I talked to Sean, and then it was like a couple hours of the day was left, and then I had to go to a doctor's appointment. And I didn't get the news that I wanted to hear at the doctor's appointment. So the rest of my night was consumed with that. And then all of a sudden I'm driving through McDonald's this morning, my daily drive-through. I'm like, oh, I'm giving a speech in an hour. And I left without my Diet Coke. So then some guy on a motorcycle just decides to cut me off, and that was after the other guy graciously let me go in front of him. So I'm like going from yin to yang and high to low all of this minute, and then I didn't have my Diet Coke, so I'm like, I gotta stop at Del Taco now and do my Diet Coke. And so I got my Diet Coke, thank goodness, it's sitting right there. And I made it. And however, I did not get my PowerPoint guru, where are you, right here, in order to do a PowerPoint presentation. So I just want to first, before I even waste my time, can you read this back there? You can, awesome. Okay, so I just want to start with a little bit of history of resolving conflict. When you hear resolving conflict, I just want to have a few of you speak out. What kinds of conflicts do you think of? What would be one? Who's been divorced? I have, twice. There's a lot of conflict in that. What were you going to say, Jason?
I was going to say the conflicts, the daily conflicts with a significant other can be stressful.
Definitely. Kids. Conflicts with kids. Any others?
Oh, yeah, kids.
Kids.
Brothers and sisters, yes.
Okay.
Even
So,
coworkers.
coworkers. Amen to all of that. And there's probably a long laundry list that we haven't even talked about. So conflict is something that we need to deal with every single day. So I have come up with my own, even though there was a PowerPoint, and these PowerPoints, we can't change them, they're PDFs. And so if I had a little more time, I would have just created a new PowerPoint, but I didn't. So we'll go with it. But I have my own little ABCs of, where'd that orange pen go? Did I leave it at my desk? Thank you. It's the ABCs of conflict resolution. we'll just take one down. And it's always be conscien, I have to say it when I think that's EOS, right? Something like that. Always be conscientious. What does conscientious mean to just any of you there? Okay. Anybody know?
Aware.
Okay, aware, that's a good part of it. What else?
Mindful.
Mindful, good. What else? Conscientious. I think it's always putting someone before you in a mindful way. And what was your word again?
Aware.
Aware. So we're always want to be mindful and aware of what others might be feeling or thinking or might have just gone through 30 minutes before when we're actually with them in that, maybe that meeting, or we just got home from work. You know, you've had this crazy day at work and you get home and you just want it to be all about you. I'm kicking my shoes off, I'm putting my legs up because my knee hurts, and I don't even want to think about what my husband's day's been like. But I need to be conscientious, right? Because that is going to probably prevent conflict later on in the evening. That didn't happen last night for me. So this is, I think when people are preparing speeches, aren't we always the ones that become the expert of that topic? Because we study it, we think about it. I know it's true, especially when I'm giving talks at church. I'm always the biggest beneficiary of what I've researched and thought about beforehand. So, always being conscientious. When I first got out of high school, I went to college on a volleyball scholarship. And for 2 years, played volleyball, and then had a major in voice and music theory and composition. But I decided to join a different church, and my parents said adios, and so I ended up on my own and decided to go on a mission and just serve others for a year and a half. But when I got back, I really wasn't so much into the music theory and voice. What was I really going to do with that? How was I going to make money? So I decided that I needed to figure out what I was going to do. I didn't have funding now for college and so on. And I was taken in by a couple who needed a house sitter. And I house sat for them, and so I say that I went to the University of Richard Bruce Whiting, who was the Vice President Legal Counsel of Kaibab Industries. And they owned 5 companies and 3 subsidiaries, and I ultimately, after my 4 years there, had a paralegal degree. I started there with the typing book I stole from high school, and because I didn't learn how to type in high school, but I thought maybe someday this might come in handy. And I did the JKH, you know, I did that. I returned it later, but they had long since used a different book after that. And I'm getting to a point here. I became a paralegal. Well, I don't know how many of you have ever worked for an attorney. Okay, you know, they're pretty much all A-type personalities, right? So my boss said, why don't I send you to a seminar on personalities, and it will help, you know, in dealing with different people in the office and resolving conflict and stuff. And I thought, wow, that's great, free day, free lunch and stuff. So I went to this seminar on determining what kind of personality I personally had, and then helping me to identify what the personalities were with people that I associated with. And again, we come to ABC. Only they did it in the reverse order. Now, they didn't define ABC, they just said if you're an A-type personality, you're a lawyer. Let's just give that example. You're someone who is always right. You can't really hear, you're borderline narcissist. I don't know. I'm not going to diagnose, I'm not a psychologist. But you really have a hard time hearing what other people are saying and recognizing that as something that might be valid. B-type personalities are ones that are strong in personality, they're very intelligent, but they can deal with these people, okay? They know how to just balance it out, and they're pretty even-keeled. They usually have some A in them themselves, but they know how to keep it at bay and when to let it out and when not to. C personalities will never work for a lawyer. They are people who are, which seat do you want to sit in? Oh, I don't care, the middle's fine. Which side of the bed do you want to sleep on? Oh, you pick first, I'll just take the other side. Their C people are just roll with the flow kind of people. But they also don't get a lot accomplished in their lives because they just really don't make many decisions, and they're not good at resolving conflict generally because they just don't want to engage in conflict at all, so they don't have any practice at it. So I have now just skipped 3 papers. So we went over some of the things that we might have conflict on, and I don't know, I'm going to push this forward and hopefully everyone can see it. So this says, can you read it back there? What? No? Can you, Elizabeth?
I don't have glasses today.
No, come on. I'll help us out. So types of conflict: conscientious personalities, misunderstanding, issues, and styles of leadership. That's kind of the one I want to work on right here, is leadership. We all in our jobs have some type of a leadership aspect. None of us are really micromanaged, I don't think. I haven't worked in every department, but I know I'm not micromanaged in my job. So if somebody starts to try to micromanage me, the hair on my back, my neck goes up, and I would have a tendency then to maybe start leaning into some conflict with that person if they're trying to micromanage me, or if they're going to call me out, or if they're going to correct me. So in our church, we teach kids from a very young age, or we try to anyways, how are you going to react in any given circumstance? This starts very young. For instance, what are you going to do if Tommy hits you on the playground? Well, now if you're a dad, you might say, well, just kick him right back in the shins. Or you might say, teach them, walk away. Whatever you teach your kids is what you teach your kids. But the goal here is that they will automatically know how to respond in that situation. My dad was a reserve officer for 27 years. So we did a lot of role playing in our house on what to do if the bad guy comes in our house, or we engaged the bad guy on the street or something like that. So I always knew, I always know I'm going to pull my knife, poke, drag. Okay, that sounds pretty gruesome, but I know that if I've got a gun in my face, that's what's going to happen if I don't have my gun on me. But the point here is that I'm always going to be prepared. I'm not even going to have to think, because if we think, we're dead, right? Or if we think too much, then we can get our wheels turning and go, well, wait, that was kind of insulting. I don't know if I really, but if we're always going to be conscientious, if we prepare that and we practice that in our mind, then when the time comes for conflict, that's how we're going to respond. We may have to bite our tongue. We may just have to write down a little note to speak to that person later. Or we may have to just say, time out, I need a break, and leave the room or wherever you're at. Now, have I practiced this perfectly? No. But it's something I'm always working on. Another thing that you might be teaching a child is, what are you going to do when someone offers you some kind of drug? If they make up their mind over and over and over again, if they play scenarios, if you as a parent don't just say, oh, what if they ask you? Well, every kid's going to come across it, but rehearse actual scenarios. We've all probably been through them, so actually rehearse those scenarios ahead of time so that they know how, so they don't end up in conflict with their friends or something. My daughter's a great example of this. She decided herself that she was never gonna use drugs or participate in that kind of thing. And so she went to a birthday party, and the mom guaranteed me that the movie that was gonna be watched was what was gonna be watched. My daughter calls me from their house phone and says, "Mom, they put an R movie in." And so I've excused myself and I'm in the bedroom. And I go, "Okay, well, do you want me to come pick you up?" And she goes, "No, I wanna stay at the party." She sat in there for an hour and a half while that movie played, because she had ahead of time said what she would do in that given situation. She was not subject to the peer pressure. She did not have conflict. They all knew what her values were because she had stated them. If they said the Lord's name in vain, she'd say, "Gosh," you know. So they all knew what she was about. So she was always there. So she really had relatively little conflict in her life. So when we do have a conflict, though, there are methods of resolving conflict. So let's see which one you think is the best thing. Julie, can you read out loud what these are, since I know you can read this as loud as you can?
Ignore it, smooth it over, force, compromise, and collaboration.
Okay. So do you think that there's ever a time that you wouldn't use one of these? Raise your hand. Speak out. These are supposed to be, like, instead of a Q&A at the end, we're just having a conversation.
Forcefully resolving conflict, I think the only situation is that knife situation. Other than that, I don't know. You know,
So maybe force would not be a good way to
With a
resolve a conflict.
with a significant other or coworker, you could get into
Very good. So this is not a good way. Okay. What about ignore it? Not good.
That could also lead to future problems.
Yeah, and I saw some other heads shaking back here. No.
Things will explode bigger later if you just ignore
That's right.
the problem.
Ticking
instead of
time
addressing
bomb if we just ignore it. And would you say smoothing over it? Now, there could be some validity to that. Someone may say something just in the course of a big discussion, and we might just kind of gloss over the fact that that was said rather than making a big deal about it, right? So that might be a valid way to resolve conflict. Compromise. What do you think about that? I'm seeing heads shaking. Does anybody have an actual thought they want to share with that?
It opens up discussion.
That's right. That's right, because I think in any situation where you have a leader, there's always going to be hopefully a leader, and if it's just a one-on-one with you and someone else, I don't know who the leader is. That's why you got to remember your ABC here. Always be conscientious. You may feel you're dead dog right, but you may want to just listen. So compromise, I think, is a good one. Smooth over, possibly, and collaboration. I think we can all agree would be a good conflict resolution. So they had this this PowerPoint out of control. So I'm just going to read a couple of things here. There's a word of caution they give on resolving conflict. And in the first one, and this is my biggest issue, is to leave emotion out of it. I'm a B personality. B personalities tend to be somewhat emotional, although we try to hide it, but I'm not very good at that. I think as I get older, I'm becoming more of a C in my personal life, but at work I'm still definitely a B. And it says to be respectful, empathetic, and a caring attitude. And that's where I think some other definitions of the word conscientious come in. And stay away from blame and accusation. Has anybody heard the term at US Foods, throw under the bus? We all have. We don't want to throw anyone under the bus. We don't want to say, well, I told you this. Well, you know, I wouldn't be asking the question again if I got it the first time. I'm a little dull. So I'm asking again earnestly. So we need to be respectful of that and answer the question again as though we had never been asked that question. And stay away from blaming or, you know, something like that. We need to encourage everyone to listen, identify areas of a disagreement, which I don't think is very hard because it's like staring you, it's the elephant in the room, right? And then search for solutions and reach a consensus. Now, all of those things may or may not be able to happen within the amount of time that you have. You may not have time to come up with a big old plan of how are we gonna resolve this and stuff. So you might have to say, let's come back with some ideas, we'll discuss it again, and then you can bring some resolution at that time. And so, again, finishing with your ABCs, if we just do this at the time of conflict, I think that you're not gonna lose any friends, and you're going to be able to come to a resolution, whether it's then or later. Thank you.